Some people can care for everyone in the room, yet feel strangely uneasy when someone tries to care for them. Help does not feel soft to them. It feels exposing. They can listen for hours, fix problems fast, and notice needs before anyone says a word. But when kindness turns toward them, something inside tightens. They say they are fine before checking if that is even true. They thank people too quickly. They act grateful, but never fully let the care land. To other people, this can look like independence. It can look mature, calm, and impressively self-sufficient. But a lot of the time, it is something older. It is the child who learned that being needed was safer than having needs. The child who became useful before they ever got to feel young. Parentified children are often praised early. They are called responsible, wise, easy, or strong. Nobody notices how much of that strength was borrowed from fear. Maybe they were the peacekeeper in a loud house. Maybe they watched a parent fall apart and quietly stepped into a role that was never theirs. Maybe they learned to read the room before they learned to read themselves. Maybe they could sense tension from the kitchen doorway and change their whole mood to keep the evening steady. Because receiving care was never just receiving care. It came tangled with pressure, unpredictability, or the feeling that someone else was already overwhelmed. They may hear a simple question like, "Do you need anything?" and freeze for a second. Not because they have no needs, but because naming one feels dangerous. Some part of them still expects a cost, a sigh, a mood change, a reminder that they ask for too much. You become the reliable friend who brings soup, remembers birthdays, and answers late-night calls. Then you go home and sit with your own exhaustion like it is a private chore. When you were young, your feelings may have entered the room after everyone else's. Other people's stress got handled first. Other people's emotions set the weather. So now, even in adulthood, you may still rank yourself last without noticing. It happens automatically. That is why care can feel disorienting. It interrupts an old identity that was built around earning your place through usefulness. And here is the part many people miss. Parentified children do not always grow into obviously fragile adults. They often grow into very capable ones. But capability can become camouflage. The nervous system learns that competence gets approval, while need brings risk. So they become the one who says, "I've got it," even while they are running on fumes. They become the one who offers comfort, with ease, then stiffens when someone offers the same. They may even crave care deeply, but the moment it arrives, they start editing themselves. They say, "You don't have to do that." They say, "It's really not a big deal." They say, "I'm sorry," before the other person has even sat down. That apology is doing more than being polite. It is trying to reduce their existence in real time. Because somewhere in them lives the old equation. The less I need, the easier I am to love. This shows up in small moments. A partner notices they are tired and offers to handle dinner, and they say no too fast. A friend asks how they are really doing, and they answer with a joke. Their boss offers support, and they suddenly feel like they are failing. They feel guilty the entire time. Guilty for resting, guilty for taking up space, guilty for not immediately giving something back. This is why rest can feel so unnatural for parentified people. Rest is not just physical stillness. It is the decision to stop managing everything for a moment. And for someone raised around instability, that can feel reckless. If I relax, who is watching the emotional temperature of the room? Even when the room is quiet now, their body may not believe it. The emergency may be gone, but the posture remains. So they hold themselves to impossible standards. They try to be low maintenance, emotionally neat, easy to keep around. But being low maintenance is often just high self-abandonment, with good manners. It sounds admirable until you realize how lonely it is. The kind where you are surrounded by people who admire your strength, but almost nobody sees how hard it is for you to put your guard down. The kind where you are loved for being steady, while privately starving for somewhere to fall apart. Parentification can also distort the meaning of love. Love starts to feel less like mutual care and more like responsibility. You may unconsciously trust people more when they need you. Being needed feels familiar. Being cared for feels uncertain. That can create painful adult relationships. You may overfunction with emotionally unavailable people because the dynamic matches what your body already understands. Then when someone healthy shows up, the discomfort can be confusing. They ask nothing dramatic from you. They are consistent, warm, and clear. And instead of relief, you feel suspicious. Not because they are doing something wrong, but because your old wiring keeps asking, what do they want from me? This is one of the quiet costs of growing up too soon. You can recognize chaos faster than care. Parentified people also tend to struggle with emotional fluency. They often know what needs to be done before they know what they feel. Ask them how they are, and they may give you logistics. Ask again, and they may go blank. Not because they are cold. They were trained to monitor life from the outside in. Their attention learned to travel outward first. Who is upset? What needs fixing? What could go wrong? How do I keep this from becoming bigger? That habit can make their own inner world feel delayed. Sometimes they do not know they are hurt until hours later. Sometimes they do not realize they are exhausted until their body makes the decision for them. So when care arrives, they may not even know how to meet it. You cannot receive what you were never taught to locate. And that creates a painful misunderstanding. Other people may think they do not want support, when really they do not know how to stand in it without bracing. Not the loud kind that announces itself. The hidden kind that whispers, if someone has to take care of you, then you are failing at the one thing you are valued for. Because your identity may have formed around being the capable one, the stable one, the emotionally useful one. So when you need comfort, it can feel like a collapse in status, like becoming less impressive, less safe, less worthy. This is why some parentified adults only ask for help when they are already past their limit. They wait until their body is shaking, their chest is tight, or they cannot think clearly anymore. Even then, they may soften the truth. They say, I'm just tired, when what they really mean is, I've been carrying too much for too long. And if someone does step in, they often start planning how to repay it. They turn tenderness into debt before they let it become comfort. They learned early that support was unstable, partial, or emotionally loaded, so now their system tries to control the vulnerability by balancing the scales too fast. You see this in relationships all the time. They remember every favor, keep invisible scorecards, and panic at the thought of owing anyone too much. Not because they are calculating, because dependence once felt risky. But parentified children often sense that the adults were already stretched thin, so they tried to become easier to carry by carrying themselves. That adaptation can look noble from the outside. Inside, it often creates adults who cannot exhale in the presence of love. Receiving means being seen in a softer state. Receiving means somebody might notice how much they actually need. And that can touch an old fear. If I stop being strong, will I still be welcome here? So they become experts at partial openness. Honest but not too honest. Vulnerable but only in well-managed portions. They tell the story in a way that keeps them composed. They share the pain after they have already organized it into something easier for others to hold. This is why people sometimes say, you make it look so effortless. They do not see the cost of all that emotional editing. They do not see the way the body stays slightly guarded, even in loving rooms. They do not hear how often the inner voice still says, do not be too much. And yet the longing for care never disappears. It simply gets buried beneath competence. It shows up as envy you feel ashamed of. The ache when someone else is gently looked after, and a quiet part of you thinks, I do not even know what that would feel like. It shows up when you get sick and still try to clean the kitchen, when you are grieving and somehow become the one comforting everyone else. It shows up when someone says, you can lean on me. And your first instinct is to smile instead of lean, to appreciate the offer without risking the act. This is not because you are broken. It is because your body learned that care was something to provide, not something to trust. That difference matters because it means the struggle is not a character flaw. It is an old survival math problem still running in the background. And survival patterns are persuasive. They do not disappear just because your life looks different now. They stay in your timing, your tone, your reflexes. They live in how quickly you apologize, how rarely you ask, and how uncomfortable you feel when someone notices your fatigue. The hard truth is that parentification can make you admired in ways that keep the wound hidden. People praise your reliability. They thank you for being so easy. But being easy is not the same as being free. Being strong is not the same as being supported. There is real grief in realizing that what looked like maturity was often adaptation. You were not simply advanced for your age. You were adjusting to emotional conditions you should never have had to manage. Because once you see the pattern clearly, you stop romanticizing it. You stop calling self-erasure wisdom. You stop calling over-functioning love. You begin to notice the moments where care reaches toward you and your body backs away. You notice how quickly you move to earn what was being offered freely. That awareness is not the end of the pattern. It is the first honest interruption. It lets you ask better questions. Why does tenderness make me tense? Why do I trust my usefulness more than my humanity? And slowly, receiving care becomes less about deserving it and more about tolerating it. That is the part many people never say out loud. For parentified people, being cared for can be emotionally dysregulating at first, not because it is wrong, but because it is unfamiliar in the deepest possible way. So the work is often quieter than people expect. It may begin with not refusing help immediately. It may begin with answering honestly when someone asks how you are. It may begin with letting a kind gesture stay simple instead of turning it into a debt. It may begin with sitting still through the discomfort of being supported, not performing gratitude, not minimizing the need, just staying there long enough to feel the tenderness and the fear at the same time. Because that fear does not mean the care is false. It usually means the care is landing somewhere old. Some people spent childhood being needed before they were known. So adulthood becomes the long process of learning that they are allowed to be known even when they are not useful. It teaches you that being taken care of is not laziness. It is not selfishness. It is not moral failure. It is part of being human, and it always was. You were just taught to skip that part. So if receiving care still feels awkward, guilty, or strangely unsafe, that does not mean you're ungrateful. It means your strength was built early, and your softness had to wait. The adult you became makes perfect sense. The hyper-independence, the competence, the guarded warmth, the instinct to carry everything alone. It came from a child who learned that staying useful kept life more manageable. But a life built only around being needed becomes painfully empty. At some point, even the strongest person starts to feel the cost of never being held. So the real question is not whether you are capable of caring for others. You already proved that too early. The real question is whether you can slowly believe that love does not become less real when it moves toward you. That care does not have to be earned through exhaustion. And if that feels difficult, it does not mean you failed. It means a very old part of you is still listening for the sound of someone else falling apart. Be gentle with that part. It grew up in a world where your small shoulders learned grown-up duties too soon. But you are allowed to put some of that weight down now. You are allowed to be more than the person who holds everything together. You are allowed to be held too.